So today we have Professor Elder, who is a dermatologist and researcher at the University of Michigan. Thank you for coming to the BAD 2017. And,
it's my pleasure.
And thank you for your talk about our current understanding of the susceptibility genes in psoriasis and psoriatic arthropathy.
Thank you. It's been a labor of love for me over many years.
So could you just summarize us in a few key points, what your research is and what your main findings are?
Sure. When we started out working on this more than 20 years ago, we thought of it more like a traditional Mendelian disease, even though we knew it wasn't classically so. And the more we worked on it, the more we realized it was different. And so the basic situation is, instead of having the disease be caused by something horribly wrong with one gene, you have the condition being caused by the sort of cumulative effect of smaller differences in many genes. So we call that polygenic, a polygenic disorder. And when you add in the effects of environment, which are of course really real in psoriasis, then they're called complex diseases. So we started working actually back in the 90s. We worked with families because that's what people were doing at the time. And then around the turn of the century, we sort of graduated to studying cases of controls. And that was driven by a change in technology called microarrays, where we could measure many more markers than we could previously. So we have expanded our sample by collecting more patients in our center, by collaborating with other groups, including people here in the UK and around the world. And we have now sort of come up with a whole set of findings, and that, as always happens in science, led to a whole new series of questions. Yeah. So I was really honored to have a chance to talk today, and what I tried to do was explain a little bit about epigenetics. So the term epigenetics was originally coined by people who are studying development, because they surmised that basically the organism has one set of genetic instructions, and yet the organism, whether it's a person or a flower, develops, and each cell becomes different. And so the question was, how did that happen? And what's happened over the last, decades, is that people have learned that it's the way that our DNA is packaged inside the nucleus in chromatin that controls these processes. And that's basically what epigenetics is. And our aha moment, you might say, was when we had come up with a list of 30 or 40 genetic signals in psoriasis, where we could tell that the prevalence of a certain genetic signal was different in the cases and the controls. And then we looked at what they were, and they didn't change a protein. And we said that was not what we expected. But instead, it seems that these genetic signals affect the way the gene is expressed. So whether the gene is on or off, or on a lot, or on a little. And so that's what I had the chance to talk about today. It was wonderful, really fun.
Yeah, it was a very interesting talk.
Thank you.
And hopefully this will allow us to target therapies in the future for
We think that basically it's part of a process that goes along with some of the immunology research, because what's really fascinating, we started from a completely different premise than the immunologists did, but we arrived at exactly the same point. So the genes that we, even though we don't know exactly what's wrong with them, the genes that we've identified, or the genetic signals, are on the same pathways that are targeted by some of our fantastic new medications.
So your talk has generated quite a lot of interest, and so we have a few questions from our Twitter followers, if that's okay.
Of course.
So we have one from Mo, who is asking, do you think we can expand this research to look at gene loci for other dermatological diseases?
Oh, thanks, Mo. That's a great question. Actually, several other diseases have been studied over the past few years using the same techniques we use in psoriasis that are quite relevant to skin. Some of the ones that come to mind right away are atopic eczema, vitiligo, alopecia areata, and another one that isn't just skinned but has had a lot done is lupus. And another condition that has a lot of relatedness to skin disease is inflammatory bowel disease. And I've been fortunate to know many of the people who've been working on these studies over the years. Mm-hmm. And it's been fun to see that we've all had very similar experience. You know, genetics, the only hypothesis you make is that genes are involved, and then you let the data tell you the answer. And in each one of these diseases, with the possible exception of male pattern baldness, the immune system has come to the fore. And in fact, many of the same processes are involved, and many of the same genes even appear to be involved, but what's different about the gene in question is different for each disease. So these are genes that play critical roles in regulating our immune system, and the way they're regulated and which cell types they're regulated in particularly seems to have a lot to do with what type of disease you're predisposed to.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for this answer.
It's been my pleasure.
And thank you for talking to us, and all the best with your research.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.